The following program is brought to you in part by the film Backdoor Channels, The Price of Peace.
Welcome to another Leon Charney report. We have a really eclectic and exciting show tonight.
Israela Oron, I'm a former Brigadier General in the IDF, and I was also the Deputy of the National Security Advisor, and I'm pleased to be here with you. You want to know about how things are between Jubilee and Bougie Herzog, the candidate for the Prime Minister. And their decision to run together was one of the most exciting events in these elections, because it created a new atmosphere in the elections. Before that, Jubilee and Bougie Herzog together had less than 20 seats in the parliament, and now we are talking about, we hope that we will be more than 30, and now the polls are talking about 24, 25. So this move really created a huge change in the politics of Israel. This is the agreement between them, that Bougie will be first the Prime Minister, and then Jubilee will be the Prime Minister. And everybody knows about her political skills and about her relationship with foreign entities, foreign countries, and that she is highly appreciated by the government of the United States, many governments in Europe, and even, it was published, she was invited to a special dinner. No, I'm not sure it was dinner, but never mind. She was invited to this meeting of the foreign ministers of the Arab League in New York City. And this move created another friction between her and the Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. But she was the only Israeli to be invited to this meeting, and she is highly appreciated by them. I'm not sure. There are some people that argue that maybe she should be the Minister of Defense. I heard from many people that they think that Jubilee is the perfect choice to be a Minister of Defense. By the way, I think that in order to be a Minister of Defense, it is not, you don't have to be a former general, and I'm talking as a former general. You just have to understand the environment, you have to understand the forces that are active in the area, and you have to have ideas, very good ideas, about how to end the military round, because at the end of every military round, there should be some kind of arrangement, agreement, that will allow us to live our lives. So it's a matter of other skills, I believe. You have to have the courage to choose, and the brains to choose between alternatives, and then the courage to create and to carry on with some moves that sometimes are not very popular. And all of those qualities, I think that Jubilee has, and she can decide, she's very intelligent, and she knows what to do. Of course, it depends on the government that would be created after the elections. Whenever you invite another party to the government, it depends on the other positions that the other ministers will have, and the other parties will, and it should be decided during the negotiation after the elections. So maybe some parties will prefer some positions and other parties will prefer other positions. And as you know, in Israel, it's very complicated. The moment the elections are finished, it's only the beginning of the negotiation between the parties about the creation of the government. First of all, the answer to your question is not if Tzipi and Bougie Herzog will win the election, when they will win the elections, because I cannot see any other alternative for the state of Israel. But of course, I stand where I sit, so my answer is obvious. It's going to be very complicated, because right now many of the parties are not very small, and the big parties are not big enough to create a coalition that will be very solid. The days of Mapai or the Likud, when it was run by Begin, it's over now, because we have parties like Shas, and we have parties like the Jewish House, and we have parties like Yesh Atid of Lapid, and they are the same numbers. So we are talking about 3 or 4 parties, and I didn't mention the other parties. And we have 4 parties that together are like half of the seats in the parliament. And it's very complicated to create a coalition, but I am sure that the more votes that our party will get, the more chances we have to create this coalition. When you are talking about right and left right now in Israel, we are talking about basically 2 issues. The first issue is the security issue, the political issue, and then there is, and I think in the same level, there is the social issue, the economical issue. They have a very large common ground between them, and they agree upon most of the tough issues, especially on what Israel should do with regard to the Palestinians, with regard to the area, with regard to our relationship with the United States. And I believe that they share the same view and the same vision for the state of Israel as a Jewish democratic state. I don't think there will be any friction in this regard. As for the other issues, the social and the economical issues, they manage. I didn't do anything about it. They managed to recruit to our party Professor Manuel Trachtenberg. And he came up with a very important plan how to improve the lives of the Israelis in Israel. And this was agreed by both of them. So this is the basis for their policy in the future, and I believe that as they will carry it out, it's very ambitious and it takes a lot of courage to carry out this policy, but they are committed to this. Professor Trachtenberg have the same ideas and the same views and the same plans, almost the same, not exactly the same, that he had before after the social revolution in Israel. The social protest in Israel, and his views, basically most of his views were adopted by Tzipi Livni and Bougie Herzog. When he worked for the current former government, only a few of his ideas were adopted, and his approach and Tzipi Livni's and Herzog approach has to be this is a approach that if you miss some of its elements, you will not be able to do the revolutions that you are expected to do, because everything is connected and they are interconnected. One of the main issues that the Israelis are struggling with is the housing issue and the crisis in the housing issue. The prices in Israel are insane. An apartment in Tel Aviv costs more than an apartment in Manhattan. So many young people cannot afford to buy housing, but the prices of the houses are connected to the workplaces, are connected to the prices of the cost of living in Israel in general. So, and it is connected to the health issue, to the educational issue. So everything is interconnected. And if you don't deal at the same time with all the issues, you really cannot solve it. So, we believe that this is going to be one of the first targets of this government that will be created by Bougie Herzog and Tzipi Livni. In the last elections, in Israel, I mean, the last election in the last 20 years, maybe less, but maybe 15 years in Israel, and I must say in the United States as well, the election are a personal issue, because you choose your leader, and when you choose your leader, you choose him by his qualities, and you are trying to predict what will be his behavior when a military crisis, security crisis will be in Israel, or if he has the guts to lead Israel to some very courageous decisions with regard to the political issues, if he has enough political skills how to create a government and to keep it alive for more than 2 years, as it happened now in Israel. So the people everywhere, I think, in the democratic countries are really interested in the skills that the Prime Minister, the future Prime Minister, is bringing along. And I think that it is really valid to choose a Prime Minister by his personal qualities. And the thing is that his ideas, the ideas of the candidates are very important, but they are important. I think the degree of importance is equal to their personality. This is a great advantage to the party, to the Zionist camp, our party, because if you see the candidates, the people that are in the first 30 places, the candidates in our camp, as opposed to the other camp, it is almost incomparable, because our people are, we managed to have the best team. We have the team, and one thing that I'm personally very pleased with, that in the first 30 places in our party, there are 10 women. And in the 10 first places, there are 4 women that each of them is a very talented and woman and persons that could be a minister in any government. I'm talking about Jubilee, of course, I'm talking about Sheli Yachimovich, I'm talking about Stav Shafir, and I'm talking about Meirav Michaeli. All of those 4 women, everyone and each of them can be the best minister. Just name it. Stav Shafir, I believe that Stav Shafir can be the Minister of Finance. Although she is young, and sometimes people undermine other people because of their age, but she's young, she's ambitious, she's intelligent, and she made it very hard to the finance board in the parliament, and she forced them to expose all the monies that went to the wrong places. And I think she can be a very substantial, she can play a very substantial role in the next government. Just listen carefully to what she says, and you will understand that we are talking about a person that, first of all, is really dedicated, is not cynical. She is in politics for the right reasons, not because she wants to be famous or a celebrity, and she is working very hard. I think those are qualities to be admired, not to criticize her for them. She was one of the leaders of the social revolution that was in Israel. She is a leader, she is a true leader, and she can do it. And in our camp, in the Zionist camp, in our party, there are many young people that are dedicated to the state of Israel. And there are the proof that the young people in Israel didn't give up of the country. They are not seeking to live elsewhere. There were much talks here in Israel, how young people in Israel don't have any hope and they want to leave Israel to other places. The young people that are in our the Zionist camp, in our party, are really the ultimate proof that this is something that is going to change. You know that I don't go to parties that I'm not invited, and personally, and I believe since the current Prime Minister, till the elections, Bibi Netanyahu already announced that he's not going to create a government with the Zionist camp. I think that this is self-evident. One of the things that I really admire in this power couple is that they are very much experienced in politics. And one of the big mistakes that were done by people in the last elections were that they gave ultimatums and they said stuff that I'm not going to sit with this and I'm not going to sit with that. And this was a huge mistake. The first rule for politicians, don't close your options. You have to win the elections to get the maximum numbers of the votes that you can, and then after you will get there, you will decide what is the best thing to do for your country, not personally for yourself. And both Bougie Herzog and Livni are there to do good things for our country. The rotation is the plan. Let's see what is going to be in the election and what kind of government they will create. Livni is there not for the position, she's there to make the lives for Israelis in Israel better. So then a decision will be taken according to the results of the elections. Both Livni and Bougie Herzog Livni and Bougie Herzog are very experienced politicians. They know how to work, they know how to create a coalition, they know what to do with the votes that the Israelis will give them, how to create a better coalition and a better government for the people of Israel. After the election, and after we will win the elections, I will continue to contribute to the state of Israel in every way that I can. I'm realistic now. No way that this government will rule again.
The Leon Charney report congratulates the team of BDC, The Price of Peace, and Leon Charney on the New York Emmy Awards win. The documentary reveals the true story of the negotiations leading up to the greatest diplomatic achievement of our time, the Camp David Accords between Israel and Egypt. Watch it on Hulu.com or buy the special feature edition DVD at select stores.
Now get the book the hit movie was based on, Leon Charney's Backdoor Channels. Learn about the backdoor channel negotiations that led to the historic 1978 Israeli-Egyptian peace treaty. Become a witness to history and order Backdoor Channels online at Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Also available at all other retailers and booksellers. Or download the audiobook at iTunes or audible.com. Relive history. Order Backdoor Channels. Get best-selling author Leon Charney's latest book, The Battle of the Two Talmuds. Join Charney as he explores years of Jewish history to find out why and how Talmudic scholars and rabbis abandoned the Holy Land for the lands of the diaspora. Learn about the power struggles behind the creation of the Jerusalem and Babylonian Talmuds. It's a book critics call engaging and enlightening. A book which will be of interest to people of every faith. Now available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, or download the audiobook of The Battle of the Two Talmuds at iTunes or audible.com. Leon Charney sets out to discover the true meaning of the Kaddish, the Jewish custom of reciting a prayer to commemorate the death of a close relative. Join Charney as he finds out the history of the Kaddish and how it has evolved. Reviewed as a refreshing walk through Jewish history and a book that deserves to be read by both Jews and non-Jews, The Mystery of the Kaddish is now available online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all other retailers and booksellers. Or download the audiobook at audible.com or on iTunes. Discover the mystery of the Kaddish. Available now over iTunes, Amazon, and Google Play. Leon Charney's cantorial CD in Disco Lam. Listen as Charney movingly sings El Moleh Rachamim and Charney's amazing rendition of a disco remix of Adon Olam, all sung in the incredible and individual Charney style. Also listen to the CDs on Rhapsody. Download Leon Charney's cantorial songs in Disco Lam, the disco remix of Adon Olam on Amazon, iTunes, and Google Play. Or listen in on Rhapsody. All available now.
Hi, I'm Leon Charney, and welcome to another Leon Charney Report. We are talking to you from Jerusalem, Israel, and guess with whom? David Hartman, our favorite subject. You know that we have done Hartman 1, Hartman 2. These are called the Hartman tapes. Never in the history of this show, and that's over a 9-year history, have we done 3 full hours of tapes with anybody, and that includes a lot of prime ministers, a lot of presidents, etc., etc. It seems that everyone in our audience wants to see or hear David Hartman, so we came back and we're going to do a 3rd Hartman tape. And it's always a privilege to be with him in Israel, and he's got a beautiful, I'll call it a citadel, which is anti-religious, but in a sense religious. And he is one of the most important philosophical personalities maybe in the world of Judaism, and certainly in the state of Israel. David, welcome again to the show.
Shalom, Leon. Thank you.
One thing I can bet, you've been watching the playoffs, the basketball playoffs.
Absolutely. It just reminds me of how far the world has changed since I played basketball and what is basketball today. I mean, there's no similarity. The people who play basketball today defy the law of gravity. You know, when I played, I was still, you know, moving with 2-hand shots and this. I mean, I can't just keep up with the speed.
We got to explain to our audience for the first time, our last tape, the Hartman tape 2, David was a great ball player, and in fact, he opposed Bob Cousy.
I was with him. I didn't oppose him. We played together.
You played together with him, and you outscored him.
That's right.
And what did Cousy say? He's going to convert to Judaism after that?
No, not exactly. He read it in Time magazine and just sent me a letter. I was shocked. I see a letter, then I see the signature from who it's from, Bob Cousy. And I just trembled as I opened up the letter, you know. And he says, David, he was very proud to hear of my role in Israel, etc., etc. And he says, by the way, I had a bad night that night. He doesn't want to sound like a jock, you know what I mean? But that's, so from then on, I put away my smicha, my ordination certificate, my PhD things, and I just walk around with Cousy's letter. Endorsement from Cousy. My grandchildren and children now look upon me with a different respect.
You know, you're kibitzing around, I'm sure you did it, but
I'm serious.
The prominence of sports in a human being's life is so strong. Why is that, David?
I think it reflects a certain type of spontaneous joy. It sort of gives expression to the aggressiveness of human beings, to the competitive instinct in human being, and yet no one suffers from it. So it's a very good sublimation for many of our energies. And it's an art form. I mean, today basketball is an art form. I mean, you see the way in which people can cooperate with each other. It's not a one-on-one game. It's where a team melds in cooperation with each other, and the type of moves and the type of, you know, each one helps the other one as they block the other guy in the drives and etc. And you see the quickness, the speed. This is a beautiful thing to see.
All right, but that's basketball. But there are people who love boxing. There are people who love matadors. They bullfights.
Yeah, but that stuff
That's aggression. That's aggression.
That's pure aggression. That's a sublimation for aggression. You know, they want to see blood. You know, there is that. But I never enjoyed those type of.
Would that be considered anti-Jewish?
I don't know about anti-Jewish. Jews, you know, the whole notion of anti-Jewish is strange to me. In some way, what is Jewish is one of the most serious questions that people ask today. Right. Who is a Jew?
Right.
Like, what does it mean to have a Jewish society? What are the characteristics of our people? Now, it depends where you come from. Now, in Israel, the heroic impulse, the army person, the person who doesn't run, the person who has initiative in war, etc., was a new hero. For other times, George Steiner, I was on a program with him last night, hails the image of the Jew.
George who?
George Steiner.
Steiner.
Is not cruel, the lack of cruelty, the idea that we never exploited and really tried to satisfy our instinct for being males through power over others. the idea of self-control, of decency, of gentleness, is one image of the Jew, which is also true. Another image of the Jew is a person who is always skeptical about what normally people think is absolutely true. The Jew is always a person, maybe verkehrt, efshe kemazon verkehrt, as they say in Yiddish, maybe you can say it the other way, and always a sense that, skeptical but yet concerned about truth, searching but yet never gullible that quickly. Is another, the art of argumentation, of seeing complexities. That's a Talmudic spirit of sort of doing justice to different points of view.
But can't non-Jews do the same thing?
Sure they can. But see, I never give these characteristics as uniquely Jewish.
Right.
To me, a Jew is a member of a family with a history and a tradition. Now, there's certain features in the Jewish experience which all human beings share. In other words, I'm never for Jewish uniqueness. I don't believe in that.
A lot of people testify or give testimony that more Nobel Prizes have been won by Jews than any other
So what of it? I mean, that doesn't...
That's not meaningful to you.
No, it really isn't.
Interesting, because a lot of...
I know, that's some sort of chauvinistic pride.
Right.
I'm not, look what Jews do on the basketball court, and they look like schlemiels there. So what am I going to say? so they do well in physics, but then they don't do well in other things. Now, the great tenors in the Metropolitan Opera are not Jewish.
Right.
There was once a Richard Tucker, Jan Pierce.
Correct.
But okay, that's all we can count, that's all. So what am I going to say? Excellence is not a unique Jewish property. All cultures produce people of excellence, people who are moral, people who are sensitive, people who are critical. As a nation, we've experienced many things. And if we're sensitive to our history, we learn the pain of being the stranger. We learn what happens when people can't handle people who are different. So our history bears witness to the terror that tyranny has of Jews because they are a different people. They don't bow down to the Hamans of history.
Right.
They don't bow down to the Stalins of history. Now, as a result of that, the Stalins of history and the Hamans of history can't succeed in their plan for triumph in the world. Means the yearning for absolute power as long as Jews are around. Jews remind you
so they're
that
a blocker. They're like a blocker.
The blocker. Jews bear witness to the fact that man is not God and the state is not God. I can never tell you who God is. If you learn Maimonides, you could only say what God is not. So the idea you have to define what is idolatry. I'm not interested so much in defining God, but what is false worship? What are the idols of history that you have to break? We are the iconoclasts. We don't bow down to strange gods. And this is, if you ask me, the unique destiny of the Jewish people. Now, our history taught us about that. So therefore, we're meant to bear witness to the importance of the love for the stranger. As I once mentioned to you, the most important commandment in the Bible is not love your neighbor. Because love your neighbor is easy, because he's like you, he's your neighbor. He has garden, he goes to the same movies, he goes to the same golf club. To love your neighbor is much easier.
So it's love the stranger.
Love the stranger, because you were strangers in the land of Egypt. In other words, what's the first story you tell a Jewish child? Leon, you remember when you grew up? The first story, we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. In the Passover Seder, you teach a Jew what it means to be a Jew by telling them that you were slaves. We were born in Egypt. We were born as a people who were subject to the pains and afflictions of a culture that could not stand and tolerate difference. As a result of that, our history from our flesh is one that we have to be super empathic, and careful to those who are the minority group.
All right, so a question, David. Must you have prayer to do this?
No.
Must you have ritual to do this?
No, let me say this to you. I do believe that ethics could be separated from ritual.
Right.
I'm not going to claim that if you don't go to synagogue on Shabbat, you're not going to be an ethical human being.
Right.
I think you should go to synagogue on Shabbat because there's something about Shabbat,
family,
which is beyond his family and is also looking upon life in another way. Not measuring yourself only by your exploitive power, not measuring yourself by how much money you make, not measuring yourself by technology, and in some way discovering spiritual peace, discovering
so why couldn't I do that going into a room and meditating for 2 hours every week? Why does it have to be on the seventh day, and why do I have to go to a synagogue?
It's not on the seventh. You don't have to go to the seventh day or the synagogue. You see, again, I'm asking you what the function of a Sabbath should be. Sabbath celebrates the world as a creation.
Is it a religious experience?
Absolutely.
Okay.
If it's not a religious experience, it loses its meaning. It's not a social principle for psychological well-being. If you want therapy, you go to a psychiatrist. I don't go to synagogue to hear sermons that'll give me therapy.
Right.
I don't go to synagogue for peace of mind.
Right.
Because many times you go to a synagogue and you're disturbed. You're disturbed either by the poorness of the sermon or by the loudness of the noise.
Or the fact that a lot of people don't give reference.
Yeah, my point in the matter is that you go to synagogue because A, you want to be with the family, you want to be with a community. The synagogue is a place that
community.
Develops community in a shared values of the community. It's a place that educates the community to what you should aspire for.
But you can also have negative values there.
Yeah, you could have negative values wherever a community meets.
That's right. And there are many experiences that people have that are negative.
Similar in Israel.
Any place.
Israel is the big synagogue of the Jewish people. It's the framework that gives a sense of home, a feeling that we are a people. Now, there are wonderful things that go on here. There's negative things that go on here. No family only is talat shekula tchelet. It's not just purity.
Pure.
If you think that, being a member of the Jewish people is a guardian against all corruptions and a passport to moral purity, you're making a big mistake. I'm a Jew because I was born into a family, I was educated to this family, and I love this family. But I do not claim that if you're not a member of this family, you're not going to be ethical, or if you're not a member of this family, you're not going to get a Nobel Peace Prize.
So could you be a good Jew and not have ritual?
You can be a good person without being a good Jew. Okay? I'd rather say it that way.
Talmudic answer.
That's a Talmudic answer. You can be an ethical human being without in any way being a Jew. You can be a moral human being, you can be intelligent, you can be wise, without necessarily joining the Jewish family. But that's not the point. The point is that I'm a member of the Jewish family. That's the given. I don't choose my family. It's a given. I define my life by their story. If I ask myself, who am I? I'm a member of a family that was Shalom Hartman and Bessie Hartman, who brought me up in Brownsville, and they told me stories. They told me the story of their life in terms of who their parents were and who their grandparents were. And there's a larger narrative. In other words, people come to know themselves from the stories that they tell. What's the narrative that I decided to define my identity by? The narrative for me is the Bible.
Well, traditionally, people kept records with the family Bible. It was passed on. In the law, we learn about it all the time. The family Bible was the tradition.
Yeah, the family read the Bible together. In other words, the family narrative.
And it went generation to generation.
Generation, right. Now the question is, what's our narrative? That's the big issue facing Jews today. When they lose history, when they lose memory, they lose their narrative. And that's the meaning of Israel. Israel has restored the historical narrative of the Jewish people. It has in some way given a drama where history and 3,000 years of history play out in one's individual identity. You see, you go in the country, you see the pastime is archaeology. They're digging in the ground and saying, look, we're deeper. We've been around for 2,000 years. We've been around for 2,500 years. And the issue for Jewish identity today, and the issue that the Jewish people face today is, to what degree will globalization and modernity swallow up your memory, and you will lose all connection to the narrative? How do you bring your narrative into the modern world?
How do you?
Oh, that's the
question.
That is the question.
That's Hartman Tape 4?
That's Hartman Tape 4, and that's to spend a year at the Shalom Hartman Institute, where we're prepared to organize a seminar of how do you bring tradition into the modern world. See, the Haredim, the right-wing fundamentalists, believe that they have the key to the narrative. And the narrative they're telling is turning off majority of Israelis, because their narrative says you have to say no to the modern world, you have to say no to feminism, you have to say no to egalitarianism, you have to say no to liberal values. If you want to be in touch with the narrative, that's what you have to do. You have to return to the ghetto mind, which rejects all other values which are not fundamentally come out of the Jewish tradition.
That's true. That's what they expect.
That's what they expect. Now, therefore, the major issue for them is the women's issue, because they see the women as a symbol of modernity. Therefore, if you go to Mei Sharim, the most concern is obscenity, modesty of dress, and etc., etc. The government is near. The whole issue in the country today is Batsheva dances. I call it the theology of Gatkis. And the whole concern, which the whole country is talking about, is should they have worn long pants or not?
To the audience, there was a Jubilee celebration, 50 years. It was a huge, huge production, Hollywood production, maybe Super Bowl production. And in that production was a segment by the Bolshevik dance group. There was a problem there of tenacious, which is modesty.
Right.
And they went to the Supreme Court and they tried to get an injunction. The Supreme Court held against it. Then they agreed to go to the president. The president worked out a compromise. But
they
10 minutes.
They should wear
half gatkis, right? Which is underwear.
Gatkis is long underwear.
Right. Now, it's not a joke because it became a huge problem in Israel, or at least a topic. And then what happened was that 10 minutes before the performance, someone marched on stage and said that they would not perform. This caused a massive split or schism between the secular Jews who said there should be freedom of press, of freedom of culture, and the Haredim Jews, the religious Jews, the ultra-Orthodox Jews, who said it was blasphemy basically on religion because they were doing a Hebrew song, I think, Echad Mi Yodea.
Yeah, right.
And so therefore it was sacrilegious. And everyone talks about it. Now, David Hartman says no one talked about the shofar. They opened up the performance there with the shofar. Now, you say that was a sacrilegious experience.
Absolutely.
Also?
The shofar is a symbol of calling people to God, calling people to repentance, not calling people to a 50th year Jubilee celebration. And they had blowing, and they were wearing white garments,
right,
which was to me vulgar, which is again to me the symbol that many times in Israel you can take sacred symbols and use it for nationalist purposes and therefore vulgarize it. That's a very serious problem. Everything becomes holy when it's used in the mantle of nationalism. See, that's legitimate. Anything that will in some way encourage nationalist pride, you can use anything. Now, if you look at the Jubilee year, here was an opportunity. This is what I want to explain to you when I feel who has the key to the past, who opens the key to the tradition. The issue religiously that they were talking about in the 50th year celebration, which the country is going in a cultural war. Right. Ronnie Milo forms his party.
Mayor of Tel Aviv, who just formed a party.
Just announced that he's going to go for prime minister and form a party.
Based upon this issue.
This issue.
Right.
So in other words, the Gatkis, the long pajamas, created a new third party. So in other words, a revolt against the religious right-wing fundamentalist for cultural freedom. So it's a holy war being fought now. Now, I claim if the country wanted to be Jewish, I would have had a different narrative. I would say the year of the Jubilee is here. What does the Bible say about Jubilee year? It's a time when you proclaim freedom in the land. All slaves are freed. No one is exploited because of poverty. No one is exploited because of miscalculation, which he sold his land because of poverty. So the land, he's returned to his land. You try to create an egalitarian society economically and socially. And you proclaim the Jubilee year on Yom Kippur, ritual. The day of Yom Kippur, which is a day of personal repentance, proclaims a national yearning to create egalitarianism and justice in a society. So wouldn't it have been nice if the rabbin had said, we're coming now to the Jubilee year. What do the economists of this country feel that we can contribute to social justice? What can we contribute to making people feel a sense of dignity and not being manipulated because of poverty? And that would be the discussion in the society. That would be the religious contribution to the Jubilee year. That's what I would want to see. What now is the society? Should you wear long pants? Did their underwear thing show? Does it look too immodest? Did they sing? In other words, what's going on here? You chose an issue that defines the Judaism of the country in the 50th Jubilee year. That's what the country is concerned about. You understand what I'm saying, Leon?
Absolutely. So, but why didn't anybody do this?
Why didn't anybody do it? Because the perception of what are religious issues are defined by the anti-Zionist community, the Haredi community that doesn't care about the Judaic spirit of this country. Because they're not Zionists, they're not interested, they're not committed to the state.
So, but wait a minute, you're saying that the religious parties in the Knesset feel the same way? These people are committed to the state, they take an oath.
The religious parties in the Knesset, depends which ones. There's religious Zionist parties who care about the state and the national renewal, and there's other religious parties who are there because they want to be able to be supported by the state.
They want to get the funding.
They have to get the support, which is understandable.
Ovadia Yosef, head of Shas.
Right.
Does he care about the state, to your knowledge?
I think he cares about it in another way, but it's not in the way that... In other words, I'm interested...
Progressive?
No, let me explain to you. You see, how do you look at the Jubilee year? You can look at the Jubilee year from the formal laws, which says you're not supposed to plant in the 50th year, and you have to return the land. Well, we don't have any more land on the basis of the tribes. So you say the law is not applicable, so therefore I don't have to think about it. My view is that the forms of this law are not applicable. But the spirit is.
Obviously.
So let's get beyond the formal structure and get at the spirit of the law. Right. If we don't get at the spirit of the law, we miss the meaning of the law.
If Aravat had converted to Judaism, he could get his land back in the 50th year.
I don't know if it was his initially. You see, I don't think he sold it. But even the question of Arafat, how you treat Arabs, is a serious religious issue. Absolutely. How do you treat minorities? How do you treat the Druses? How do you treat Bedouins? Now that's what the religious community should be concerned about, because you should love the stranger, because you were strangers in the land of Egypt. And Israel should be a model society of the way it treats minorities. Now if it doesn't, then it's not a Jewish society. In other words, Judaism is not that every restaurant is kosher. It's not that you won't see bread on Pesach. And I think that's important, but that's not the only criteria. We've come back into statehood, into power. We control a whole national culture. Our Judaism should be equivalent to this major revolution. It should be a Judaism that inspires the society as a whole, not just the kitchen. Again, the kitchen. Back to the kitchen. Back to El Al. If I run on El Al, you want real kosher, hot kosher, nachamal kosher. Again, not again the pots and the pans. I mean, Israel is a revolt against the pots and the pans. No? Shouldn't it be?
I got to cut for a break. It's so true. I'm not laughing at what he's saying. I'm laughing at the metaphors, because the tears are coming out. And obviously we know David Hartman very well. We've taped him for 2 hours before. And what he says are pearls of wisdom, which is a progressive way to become a Jewish person and be part of a Jewish nation. And by the way, it's the first time I have this crew with me, about 2 or 3 times. First time, when you finished last time, we got a standing ovation from the crew. Only 3 of them, am I correct? We'll be back. Don't leave us.
The Leon Charney Report congratulates the team of BDC, The Price of Peace, and Leon Charney on the New York Emmy Awards win. The documentary reveals the true story of the negotiations leading up to the greatest diplomatic achievement of our time, the Camp David Accords between Israel and Egypt. Watch it on Hulu.com or buy the special feature edition DVD at select stores.
Now get the book the hit movie was based on, Leon Charney's Backdoor Channels. Learn about the backdoor channel negotiations that led to the historic 1978 Israeli-Egyptian peace treaty. Become a witness to history and order Backdoor Channels online at Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Also available at all other retailers and booksellers. Or download the audiobook at iTunes or audible.com. Relive history. Order Backdoor Channels. Get best-selling author Leon Charney's latest book, The Battle of the Two Talmuds. Join Charney as he explores years of Jewish history to find out why and how Talmudic scholars and rabbis abandoned the Holy Land for the lands of the diaspora. Learn about the power struggles behind the creation of the Jerusalem and Babylonian Talmuds. It's a book critics call engaging and enlightening. A book which will be of interest to people of every faith. Now available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, or download the audiobook of The Battle of the Two Talmuds at iTunes or audible.com. Leon Charney sets out to discover the true meaning of the Kaddish, the Jewish custom of reciting a prayer to commemorate the death of a close relative. Join Charney as he finds out the history of the Kaddish and how it has evolved. Reviewed as a refreshing walk through Jewish history and a book that deserves to be read by both Jews and non-Jews, The Mystery of the Kaddish is now available online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all other retailers and booksellers. Or download the audiobook at audible.com or on iTunes. Discover The Mystery of the Kaddish. Available now over iTunes, Amazon, and Google Play. Leon Charney's cantorial CD in Disco Lam. Listen as Charney movingly sings El Moleh Rachamim and Charney's amazing rendition of a disco remix of Adon Olam, all sung in the incredible and individual Charney style. Also listen to the CDs on Rhapsody. Download Leon Charney's cantorial songs in Disco Lam, the disco remix of Adon Olam on Amazon, iTunes, and Google Play. Or listen in on Rhapsody. All available now.
We're back. It's Leon Charney, A Living Covenant by David Hartman, with whom we are speaking today. This giant philosopher in the state of Israel, emigrated, by the way, from Montreal, where he was a pretty comfortable guy, and he was a pulpit rabbi for about 2,000 people, families, I guess, and came here a long time ago to show that he has a commitment to the state of Israel, and he's trying to inform people as to what he thinks the state should look like. Highly important. The 5,000 was sold in hardback already, so you got to catch this before it's out of publication. David the Pope. First of all, his relevancy. Does he have any relevancy to us as Jews?
Sure he does. I mean, he's the spiritual head of one of the greatest churches and movements in the world. And he can define the moral strength of Catholicism and the way Catholicism has to in some way speak and act in the modern world. And he's a person of great integrity, intellectual power, very powerful intellectual, who is trying very deeply, I think, to correct the abuses of the church over the years regarding the Jewish people. I think that's sincere. I think in some way he can make a major difference into the future of Judaism and Christianity.
Can you tell me one thing, aside from the Pope, why, let's say the 50th anniversary of Israel, every major media outlet in the world was involved with this thing? I think CNN had this thing live for a while. I think BBC had it live for a while. Could you explain that to me?
I was on Channel 4 of English television last night.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an amazing phenomenon.
What is it?
There is a fascination with this story. See, Christianity and Islam in some way have mediated the biblical tradition to the world. I mean, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is a byword for people. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is a living phrase that has attracted enormous frameworks. Jerusalem. The Jerusalem for the pilgrims was a symbol of hope. American, every liberation movement in South America, liberation theology, works itself out from the Exodus story in the book of Exodus. In other words, so the Jewish story and the Jewish history is part of world culture. And therefore there's a very deep belief in the world that this people were meant to be the carriers of something important. The Lord's people. The Lord's people.
Chosen people?
The Lord's people is another way of saying it. They were in some way not meant to be just plain. They were meant to carry something of major importance.
And therefore, all this involvement by everybody.
They want to know the story. They want to know the story. They want to know who we are. Do we bring hope to politics? I mean, they feel in some way, I mean, there's a certain banality in the world today. There's a certain feeling, can you really do something major? All the great revolutions failed. All the great ideologies failed. Can this little people that came out of torture and death 50 years ago, can they rebuild themselves into a light unto the nations?
All right. Is Israel a miracle, or is it hard work? Asa Weitzman, the president of Israel, said in his Jubilee address that he doesn't believe in miracles. He believes it's hard work, blood, sweat, tears that built Israel. And it is one of the greatest experiments of the 20th century, for sure.
Right.
What is it?
Well, it's a miracle that we were prepared to do hard work. I mean, that you took a people who are the people of the book, who are people who are students, and transformed this people into soldiers, into farmers, and it's amazing. I mean, the transformation of a culture of the school to a people capable of taking responsibility for its life, a people that absorbed millions of people, never said no to a wandering Jew. That's a powerful moral commitment.
Oh, I agree with you, but I can't get you let's get away with it. And what is a miracle? How do you define that?
Something that inspires you to live with surprise.
Something that inspires you to live with surprise.
Right, and not be...
Is that a religious experience?
I think not to be crushed by routinization. You know, kacha. This is, to feel, life goes its normal course, and never to live with a sense of wonder. The sense of wonderment, the sense of amazement. This Heschel captured this very deeply. How do you get up in the morning and in some way celebrate life as a miracle? That's what I mean. We say that in our prayers. And for the miracles that you do with us each day, what type of miracle is that? Miracle is not just an objective change of nature. It's the way you respond to life. That you live with appreciation, you live with gratitude, you live with surprise, you live with wonderment.
So
You're not callous.
It's a human
response to reality.
It's a human response.
That's correct.
Not necessarily a religious response. Last time we were here, we interviewed you on Hanukkah, and we talked about the Hanukkah menorah and the miracle
of the lights
and all that. So basically, with you, a miracle it's interesting.
A miracle is the people who are prepared to sing praises to God from their experiences of life. They're prepared to sing a new song. They're prepared to, in some way, break the routines of their lives.
Try something new.
Try something new, to be open to something new. That their souls should not shrivel up in the routine. They break routine and they break into a new energy, a new sense of vitality to life. That's the experience of miracle. To live that way is to live with that sense of vivaciousness for life. To get up in the morning and say, Moda ani lefanecha, I give thanks to you for restoring my soul. I celebrate life. I put on my clothes, I make a blessing. I walk straight, I make a blessing. I thank God for the simple biological functioning. I don't take even my existence for granted. Why do we have to suffer in order to appreciate the gifts of life? Part of religion is that's the purpose of prayer, is to in some way take the normal things we do and to celebrate it as a surprise. Why do we make a blessing before we eat food? Because we don't take that for granted either. It's a wonderful thing that nature brings forth food, and we in some way bring God into this experience. See, God is the experience of surprise. God, the name of God in the Bible is I will be. Not only I was, but I will be. You're open to a new future. You're open to the possibility of something radically new breaking into history. And Israel is the great breaking into something new.
All right, so Jew, basically, they were monotheists, and the God was unavailable, whereas the others, they were paganists.
Yeah, but the point...
They worshipped idols, right?
Jews were the ones who taught about the unseen God, the imageless God.
That's right.
The God who's not experienced through images, through signs, but it's the God who's heard. As the Bible says, you have not seen, but you have only heard. So my understanding of that is that we meet God when we hear the commandment, when we hear our duty, when we develop an ability to be responsible for the other, is when we hear God. God is the transforming of an egocentric soul to a soul that is prepared to live in responsibility for others.
So it's not pots and pans?
No.
It's not land?
No.
You wouldn't give up peace for land. In other words, you want peace more so than land. Am I correct?
To me, a holy land is where holy people live. You understand what I mean?
Yes,
in other
absolutely.
words, and I'm concerned about security. I think we have to distinguish between security issue, and I don't know who defines that. That's also an open question. And the question of territorial power. I'm prepared to see the flourishing of a Palestinian reality with their dignity. I'm prepared to share the home with them as long as there won't be shedding of blood.
Okay, so human life is
obviously sacred for me, not land.
Right. Now, Jerusalem, is there anything sacred about Jerusalem?
Oh, very much so. It's sacred because it brings enormous memories to the Jewish people.
Could you share it?
I can share it. I think we can find a way to share it. I think so, in some way. I always say where there's love for God, there's room for the other. In other words, where there's love, there's room. I think we can find some technical solution where we don't lose the deep feeling of our solidarity with Jerusalem, and at the same time find a way to enable the Palestinians to celebrate their own dignity. I think when there will be trust, you will find the opportunities for compromise are enormous. The real issue is trust.
When will that come?
Oh, Leon, I don't know. I think that we both have to act in such a ways that we create trust in each other.
See, Eir Omar, whom we interviewed on this trip, said that Bibi Netanyahu is making a fuss over 9 or 11 or 13%. He said it's not the issue whatsoever. The whole issue is whether you trust the other party, whether you trust Arafat. And this is the standing issue now in terms of whether they go forward on the Oslo agreements.
But you see, the point is this: you can never know if you can trust each other until you've created a new reality.
You have to test it?
You have to test it.
Right.
But you don't test it with your eyes blind as a naive child. You always build in checks to make sure that if it doesn't work, you're not vulnerable. But we have to learn to trust them, not learn to trust them, to give them an opportunity to teach us that we can trust them. And we have to help them learn to trust us. Our track record hasn't been that great either.
Well, I'll give you one of my experiences, which is very poignant. I was very involved in the Camp David peace process. We celebrated at the White House, and after that we had a party where even I sang cantorial songs, and Yigal Yadin was there, Ezer Weitzman, Yitzhak Modai, and they were all calling Israel to find out what the reaction was. There was no happy, really energetic reaction to the fact that Camp David was finally signed. On the other hand, after the Six-Day War, when the battle victory was there, people were euphoric, absolutely euphoric.
Well, that's because they thought that they were going to be destroyed. So that's always that case, you know what I mean? But look at the way we greeted Sadat.
Beautiful, beautiful.
You saw when he landed, the whole country opened their souls to him.
Which shows you what?
That the people really want peace, yearning for peace.
Yearning for peace.
Israelis want peace. They don't want to be machos over the Arabs. This is a good people here.